Hey, welcome back. I recently picked up a couple interesting new knives. The Koenig Arius Mini, or the Mini Arius rather. Phenomenal reverse flick and drop shed action, as well as the Sharknivco Mini Goblin. Pretty damn good in its own right and super duper light. And this kind of inspired me to put together what I'm going to call the hype train video or something. I'll come up with a good name for it after the fact. But generally the idea here, and I'm actually missing a knife I just realized that I plan to have on here, so bear with me 1 second. There's one of them, boink, boom. Let's just work this in right here. Little something from Holt. And you know what, while we're at it, and I have one other knife that was pretty darn hyped this year, which was the Sharknivco Waka. Let's throw that in there too. Maybe I'll put this here down at the bottom. Sorry, I thought I had this already, but I'm not perfect, and neither are you, and none of us ever will be. So, I wanted to just put together a video that sort of looked back on 2023 and said, what were some of the most hyped knives of the year and were they worth the hype? It's a really interesting question. I unfortunately don't have some of what I would consider to be the most hyped knives of the year. Some of those to include like the McGinnis PM2 was pretty hot this year, the 3.5 inch. And a whole bunch of others. I thought about including Hinderer in here, but it's like they've been around for so long. Let's not just throw that in here. But that was certainly hyped at a point this year. It certainly dropped off in terms of what their secondary market value looks like. But from a collector perspective, from a knife owner perspective, what are some of the knives? And I think of no better example than the SPK Lamia that were so freaking hyped. I remember there was a point this year where Alex Grabber, I think is his, I can never pronounce his name. Alex from SPK actually said, don't pay those secondary prices for my knives. You're crazy. I've heard Metal Complex go on record saying, don't go out and spend, over $1,000 on the Demko. You're crazy. There has been a lot of ups and downs in the market. Koenig, Arius, talk about a great example of one that was insanely hard to get and overpriced. I shouldn't say overpriced, but over table price earlier this year. These things are like going for a table or below, even in brand new condition right now. It's another great example of a knife that had a ton of hype on it. No better example, again, the Brown Knives Mini FSD was insanely hyped. An $800 MSRP or table price was going for $1,200 on the secondary regularly for a few months. So another great example. The Wakas were insane. The Shams were insane. These Wakas were like $1,100 table price. I saw them going for like $2,500 at one point, which was insane. These Spiro Shams, this new version in washer, were going for insane prices. $1,100 table. They were going for $2,000 plus, depending on the size. 3.3 inch were going for like $2,200 to $2,500. And then you've seen some knives that have been around a little longer. This is a beautiful version, of course. This is a Holt Morpheus, but these kind of like the Hinderer came down a little bit over time. And then I just have two honorable mentions, not U.S. or South African made here, but the Factor got insane hype because a lot of knife makers called it kind of their knife of the year, and then it's made in China by Best Tech. This thing got crazy on the secondary. People were paying, $550, $600 for a knife that had a table value of, gosh, what was it? $360. The Evo 3.0 from Custom Knife, Custom Knife Factory, CFK. These were going crazy in this version, and the Damas steel was going for like over $2,000, even though it was a $1,800 table price. So there's some pretty wild things going on in the secondary earlier in this year. The economics, the market kind of hit a point where interest rates went up, people's cash flow went down, real estate cooled off, stocks prices dropped, and you saw a crazy, or at least I saw a crazy drop. A lot of us saw this in the market. And then there are these crazy knives like the VC Edge interface that some people just didn't even realize they could get on the secondary market. And for a while, these were selling at like table price or even under on the secondary market. Now they seem to have heated up above table price, which is weird. So this one's kind of out of whack. And then like same thing with the McGinnis Spoke. These things were going for, pretty crazy prices all year, I suppose, and they have not slowed down. So you do have these certain models that have actually even caught more momentum currently in the current economic condition. The hype train is real, overcoming, even the prices on those. I've been seeing these Demko 8022s going for above table price. Table price is already $2,000, and they're going for $2,500, $3,000, $2,800 pretty regularly. Man, sweet knives though. And then you've seen somewhere in the middle where like some of these Demko 8020S, especially these full textured titanium. If you got a full factory textured titanium made in the USA like this, maybe they were going for above or below table pretty regularly throughout the year. They're sitting at about table price right now, but they've been above table most of the year. And I think they're really fair at the $650 table price. $700 maybe after tax, depending where you got it from. Like that one right there is Blade HQ, so you're paying tax on it. And I just wanted to compare some of these and talk about it. I think the Oz Roosevelt, as I head towards Makers Syndicate, I'm going to be going to Makers Syndicate this week out in Indiana. Man, talk about a knife that's been crazy hype for the last couple of years. I think probably one of the best all-around knives made right now for like a titanium frame lock. I struggle to think of one that's consistently topped my list as a top 3. It's just so good. The action is so amazing. It's so light, 3 inches, cutting edge, right materials, right design, and these continue to sell above table. So which ones are hype, which ones are real? And I'm going to talk through that really quickly. So here are the ones that I think are amazing. I think the VC Edge interface, for its engineering, there's nothing like it. I think it's absolutely worth the hype. I think it's probably underhyped right now, if anything, just compared to some other stuff on the table. And it is absolutely phenomenal. I do think the Oz Roosevelts are worth the hype. I think the SPK Lamia is fantastic. I love it at table price. I don't know if I love it at, $1,200 that it was going for a while there. Table price is like $700 on this knife, and I think that's very fair. The Sham, considering what a lot of custom knife makers sell their knives for, which could be, in the, $2,000 range, that's a really nice knife for what it is. Now it's smaller, so it doesn't feel like the materials really justify the price as much, but at the $1,100 table price, amazing. Secondary price, $1,700, $1,800. It's not too crazy for what it is, because that's what a lot of these knives actually cost on the secondary or, at table price when you go get them from a show. So like that's a $2,000 knife at table price. They're different, but I don't think they're that different. I think that they're kind of similar in the value range, this guy versus that guy. This obviously has a lot more material, but 50% more material? I don't know, 20%, somewhere in there. Koenig Arius, I think the fit and finish is phenomenal. I think they're worth table price all day. The secondary prices weren't too crazy on them, $800, $900. I think they're worth that. I think the CNC work that's done on these, you end up with a knife that's, on the quality of a nice custom knife. And yeah, I think they're kind of worth the hype, honestly. Just from a ergo perspective, they're not for everyone. The brown knives, the tolerances and everything, really great. I have a friend that's saying he thinks this version with the button lock, the brown lock, is worth the hype, and this one's not. Yeah, I don't know. I actually think maybe, to me, this one might even be more worth the hype, because it's not often you get a knife that's that drop shut while having perfect lockup. I mean, that's a really remarkable feat. But I agree that from a fidgety perspective and a fun perspective, this brown lock is just like an amazing locking mechanism, and it gives you all these different deployment methods and stuff. And, there's some real value to what he's done with this lock. But I think the engineering feat and the tolerances are almost more impressive on this new mini FSD-I model. So the thing I think is a shortcoming on the Waka is probably that the detent balance has kind of gone back and forth. It's pretty damn good right now on the detent, but no over travel stop to me is a shortcoming for an $1,100 knife. I feel like This thing should have an over travel stop. So that's a little bit of a miss for me, but not too big. No other deployment model on this guy, leaves it right around table price for me. I don't really love hype on this one, but I don't think they're going too crazy this year. They've been pretty chill. They were a little worse earlier in the year. I think for a Dama model like that, I can feel the hype a little bit, gets me a little more excited. The McGinnis, probably one of the more justified. I mean, it's just a really phenomenal all-around knife, but I don't love it for some of the crazy secondary prices. I struggle to pay, you know, $2,500 for one of these. I think it's an amazing knife for $1,000, $1,500, maybe $1,800. He sells, you know, tables about $1,800. That feels about right for me on that. This guy at $1,100 now. It used to be $850. Again, phenomenal value for what he does. Like, I look at these two and I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's a custom knife and this is a CNC, but, you know, damn, it's good. This guy for the price feels very fair on the secondary market right now, going for around table price. You know, when they were a little hyped, it was a little hard to justify, but I got it because, man, there aren't many knives that are big old knives like that have that kind of locking mechanism and that kind of fidgetiness. Like, for someone that wanted a hard use carry knife, this was that like 5 to 6 ounce knife that was very hard to match for hard use kind of use case. So Demko, I'm a pretty big proponent of, and you know, for $650, I feel like you're getting a pretty damn good knife for what it is. You know, is the fit and finish the same as some of these others? Maybe not, but it's damn right up there. Roosevelt, I've already talked about, just phenomenal, worth the table price plus a lot all day. I feel like this could be a $1,500, $2,000 knife, and there's a reason that they were going for that on the secondary. When there were only a few hundred made, they were going crazy on the secondary because everyone wanted it because it's that good. And you know, now there are 2,000 plus of those made. You're seeing that secondary come down quite a bit because not everyone can justify $1,000 knife that they carry and use, so they're going to sell it to recoup their, you know, their value in that knife. But to me, that is a remarkable feat of engineering and worth every dollar of both table and secondary price. I don't care what anyone says. The Factor, you know, $350, $600, whatever. It doesn't really matter too much. This is a pretty neat engineering feat for sure. You know, it's made in China, so the inherent value of it with the volume you can produce is a little tougher to justify for me. But, you know, for what the knife is, gosh, I don't know. In some ways, it compares with a $100 knife. In some ways, it compares with a $1,000 knife. So this one I feel like is more subjective than almost anything on the table based on what you love. So that's kind of interesting. And I actually think these CKF Evos, you know, for the table price, other than this Damas steel and Timascus version, are really justifiable for the $700 or so that you could get a regular plain Jane with the big, you know, beautiful belt satin grind. You know, questionable where it was actually made, if it's Russia or China or whatever, but damn, you're getting a nice knife with great tolerances for the money, and they're real consistent on the detent. So last one here, the SPK Lamia. Yeah, his tolerances are phenomenal. The engineering's phenomenal, made in the USA. You get to see exactly how he makes it. He's very transparent with his manufacturing processes. Love the detent, love the rollout capability. This V1 in particular was phenomenal. He's done this new V3 that has bearing interchangeability, and that's really interesting to me. So yeah, generally these are to me worth it. Now, if you are just looking for a knife to use and you make $3,000 a month and you're just going paycheck by paycheck to pay your rent, which is $1,500, and you can just barely pay your groceries, I don't suggest you go out and spend $1,000 on a pocket knife. There's phenomenal knives for, you know, even at the upper end, $150, like the Demko 80-20.5 for $50 with the CGRB Pyrite or Echo. Like, these are going to get the job done and last you, you know, 10, 20 years. Those are really good knives that are actually, you know, within 20, 30% tolerance wise and manufacturing quality wise to some of these other knives, but they're done in volume in China or Taiwan, you know, so like you got to look at your personal finances and decide what's reasonable. Maybe a good in-between would be like a tactile Rockwall that's made in the US for $300 and has very similar tolerances to a lot of these. It doesn't have the ability to roll it out quite as elegantly as some of these, But man, the pop open factor is phenomenal, and that could be a really good go-between for like 300 bucks. Try and take a look. Spyderco makes some great knives for $150, $200 that, you know, again, may not be in the tolerance range of some of these others, but have a hair splitting edge and are made in the USA. You go for Hinderer, $425 table price. Not far off any of these, right in there with the Demko. Very easy to justify, I think, if you want a USA made knife, save up for a few months or whatever. And that is a knife that will last you a lifetime. There's a lot of blade stock there to go for a long time. So Benchmade Bug Out, one of my favorites, $150. You're talking about something that you can carry all the time without even noticing it in your pocket. Worst case, you're gonna end up running that through your laundry because it's so darn light you won't notice it. Made in USA, phenomenal knife, S30V blade steel, it's fine. These are good options that don't make these justifiable for the average person that's just gonna use their knife for use or whatever. You know, I'm not talking to my brother trying to convince him that his bug out's not sufficient. He should carry a Rosie or carry a Koenig or something, right? This is because I love the additional milling, the additional tolerances, the beautiful blade steel. As a collector, these are the things that, you know, bring me, you know, pleasure of collecting knives. And I can sense the difference, but maybe the average user wouldn't. You know, something like this is just a remarkable feat of engineering to be able to produce a 3.625-inch knife that's 1.5 ounces. It weighs as little as my mini bug out. Those are things I appreciate. You know, those aren't necessarily things that everyone would appreciate or would realize the value of in their own use. So the hype train is a real, which ones are better than others. I'm going to probably do a couple of bake-offs like the Rosie versus the Mini Arius and some other one-offs in an upcoming series of comparisons. I used to do these videos called absurd knife comparisons. I'd like to do some more, you know, good knife comparisons. So I'll probably do a little bit of a bake-off, but I wanted to do one just kind of dedicated. These were some of the most hyped knives of these years. There were twice as many of this. I mean, it's crazy how many knives get crazy hype. So there were a whole bunch of others that were fantastic throughout the year and worth considering. These are the ones to me that kind of met more of the things that I look for and are, you know, kind of at the top of the stack. I also have, you know, knives from Scott Hansen and stuff that are custom one-offs, but I don't really consider these high. These are very low volume, even beyond these, and not really as hyped, not as well known as, like, you know, maybe Shamwari or something from Gareth Bull Knives. It's better known, and he's done some production level versions of it and stuff. Koenig does much higher production. Oz is now getting, you know, over 1,000 knives a year produced. So, you know, with those things in mind, I'd say, you know, pick your poison and think about what really matters to you and what makes sense for you financially. The good news is, as long as you don't act stupid and go pay the person that's asking the most money on the secondary market their asking price for one of these, if you're careful, you can buy one, use it for a while, sell it for, you know, a $50, $100 loss, maybe a $50 or $100 gain if you're into that kind of thing. I'm not going to get too much into that topic of scalping knives. I'm not a big fan of it, though, for profit. But, you know, to each their own. It's a free country and free world. So that's all for now. Please like, subscribe. Hope this one was fun for you, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.